At your age, you should settle for less and accept living with the bare minimum. My son Robert and my daughter-in-law Nicole had just said that to me. We were in the living room of my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. The words hung in the air like poison. Then, in that precise moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I cancelled the automatic monthly support of $8,000 that I had been sending them for 7 years. 7 full years. 84 months without fail. And I watched as their bare minimum disappeared in a matter of days. But let me explain how I got here. How a 64-year-old woman who dedicated her entire life to caring, giving, and supporting her family ended up being treated as if her existence were a burden. My name is Mary Johnson. I am 64 and have been a widow for 11 years. When my husband died, he left some debts and a small pension that barely covered survival. Robert was 27 back then. He had just married Nicole. I worked. I worked harder than I ever had before. I cleaned houses. I babysat. I did sewing. I sold food. Everything I could to stay afloat and help my son start his married life. Why? Because that's what mothers do, right? They sustain. They support. They give without expecting anything in return. At first, it was only $500 a month to help them with rent while Robert looked for a better job. Then it was $1,000. After that, $2,000. And it kept growing until one day I found myself sending them $8,000 every single month. How did I get that kind of money? 4 years ago, the house my mother lived in was sold. It was an old property in a neighborhood in Boston that had greatly appreciated in value. My sister and I inherited it. My share was $180,000. I invested it well, with the help of a financial advisor recommended by my cousin Doris. The investments paid off. They generated steady returns. And I, the fool that I was, decided that my son deserved to live better, that my granddaughter Audrey deserved to have opportunities, that it was my duty as a mother and grandmother to make sure they didn't go through the hardships I did. So I set up an automatic transfer. Every first day of the month, $8,000 left my account directly to Robert's. No questions, no conditions, just a mother's love converted into numbers. And they got used to it. They got so used to it that it stopped being help and became an entitlement. It stopped being gratitude and became a silent demand. It stopped being love and became dependency, disguised as normality. Nicole was the one who suggested I sell my small apartment 3 years ago. "It's too big for you alone, Mary," she said. "Why do you need 2 bedrooms? Sell it and rent something smaller. That way you'll have more liquidity." Liquidity to keep sending them money. Of course, I didn't do it. Something inside me resisted. It was one of the few times I said no, and Nicole never forgave me for it. From then on, every visit was loaded with comments. Passive-aggressive remarks about how selfish I was to keep so much space just for myself, about how that money could be better used on them, naturally. But that Sunday was different. That Sunday something changed. They had arrived around 3 in the afternoon, without calling ahead, as was their custom. I was preparing dinner when I heard the doorbell. When I opened the door, there they were. Robert, in the expensive shirt I had bought him for his birthday. Nicole with a new purse that probably cost more than my rent for 2 months. "Hi, Mum," Robert said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek before walking straight into the living room. Nicole followed him. She didn't even greet me. I offered them coffee. Nicole asked for green tea. Robert said yes to coffee, but without sugar, because he was watching himself. It took me 20 minutes to prepare everything, serve it, and bring it to the living room. They didn't even look up from their phones to thank me. That's when I mentioned the dress. It is important for all families to establish healthy boundaries and mutual respect. Even within the closest relationships, recognizing that an individual's personal space, finances, and choices belong to them alone is vital. A mother's role is to support, not to be a never-ending source of funding, and disrespecting a parent's autonomy damages the foundation of the family unit. My cousin Sarah's daughter is getting married in 2 weeks, I said, sitting down in my armchair. I want to buy something nice for the occasion. It's been a long time since I went to a celebration like that. Nicole looked up. That look, the one I had learned to recognize over the years, that mix of irritation and condescension. "A new dress?" she asked, as if I had told her I wanted to buy a yacht. "Why do you need a new dress, Mary?" "Well, to look presentable, to feel good. I haven't bought new clothes in years, and at your age, you should settle for less and accept living with the bare minimum." She said it just like that, without hesitation, as if it were an absolute truth that I should accept without question. Robert nodded slightly without looking away from his phone. I felt something freeze inside me. "You just have to understand," Nicole continued, placing her cup on the table with a dry thud. "You're no longer at the age to be spending on unnecessary things. You have to think about the future, about being responsible with your money." Responsible. Me, who had been sending them the equivalent of a full salary every month for 7 years. Me, who deprived myself of everything to ensure they lived comfortably. Me, who ate the same meal all week to save money and continue being their inexhaustible resource. I was not being responsible. "A dress isn't necessary," Nicole added. "No one notices that at your age. The important thing is that you have the basics: food, a roof, medicine if you need it. Everything else is a splurge you can't afford." A splurge? A $150 dress was a splurge I couldn't afford. But the new SUV Robert had bought last year, the one that cost $35,000 and for which I paid half the down payment, that wasn't a splurge. It was a necessity. The vacation they took in Miami 6 months ago, the one that cost almost $10,000, that wasn't a splurge. It was important for them to unwind from stress. The purse Nicole was carrying that day, the one I recognized because I had seen it in a magazine, and it cost more than $2,000, that wasn't a splurge. It was an investment in her professional image. But my dress, my simple desire to feel pretty for one day, that was unacceptable. "You're right," I finally said. The words came out of my mouth, but I didn't recognize them as mine. They sounded hollow, distant. Nicole smiled, a small, victorious smile. "I'm glad you understand, mother-in-law. Sometimes you have to be realistic. You've lived your life. You had your time. Now what's appropriate is for you to adapt to this new phase with humility." Humility. As if the money I sent them every month was a product of my arrogance and not sacrifice. As if my desire for something nice was an act of presumption and not a desperate search for feeling alive again. They stayed for 2 more hours. They ate the slow-cooked pulled pork I had prepared that morning. Robert asked me to pack some leftovers for him to take home. Nicole criticized the temperature of the tea. They talked about their plans, their projects, their problems. They never asked about mine. When they finally left, I closed the door and stood in the hallway. The silence of my apartment was deafening. I walked to my bedroom. I sat on the bed. And for the first time in many years, I truly saw myself. I saw a 64-year-old woman wearing the same worn clothes for years. I saw the walls of my room that needed paint ages ago. I saw the old furniture I never dared to replace because it wasn't necessary to spend money on that. I saw my life reduced to the minimum while I financed the abundance of others. And something inside me simply broke. I got up and went to my small desk. I opened the drawer where I kept my bank statements. I spread them out on the wooden surface. 7 years of transfers. 84 payments of $8,000 each. $672,000. Almost $700,000 that I had sent to my son in 7 years, and he had just allowed his wife to tell me I should settle for less. I grabbed my phone. My hands were trembling, but my mind had never been clearer. I logged into the banking app. I found the section for scheduled transfers. There it was. Monthly payment, Robert Johnson, $8,000, automatic every first day. My finger hovered over the cancel option. I thought about Robert as a child, how I had cared for him when he had a fever, the sleepless nights I spent when he was sick, all the sacrifices I made so he could have a good education, nice clothes, good opportunities. I thought about the woman I was, the one who believed a mother's love had no limits or conditions, but I also thought about the woman I am now, the one who has just been reduced to the bare minimum by the very people living off her generosity. And I pressed cancel. The screen asked for confirmation. "Are you sure you want to delete this automatic transfer?" "Yes," I whispered. "I'm sure." And I pressed confirm. The transfer was cancelled. A notification popped up on the screen. Automatic transfer successfully deleted. I stared at my phone for several minutes, waiting to feel guilt, waiting for regret, waiting for maternal instinct to make me back down. But the only thing I felt was a deep, terrifying relief. Because for the first time in 7 years, the money I had earned, I had invested, I had taken care of, was going to stay with me. And they were going to discover exactly what it meant to live with the bare minimum. The next few days were strange. I woke up every morning expecting to feel the weight of guilt crushing my chest, expecting that inner voice, the one that had always told me a good mother sacrifices everything for her children, to make me call the bank and reactivate the transfer. But that voice didn't come. Instead, there was silence. A silence that scared me at first, but which slowly began to feel like peace. It was Wednesday when I really started to realize what I had done. I sat at the kitchen table with my morning coffee and opened my bank statements again. Not just the last year's, all of them. Since this whole situation began, I spread the papers in front of me, as if they were pieces of a puzzle I was finally ready to put together. 7 years of $8,000 monthly, $672,000 in direct transfers. But that wasn't all. I started remembering, adding up, taking notes in an old notebook I found in a drawer. The down payment on Robert's car. $18,000 I gave him a year ago because it was a unique opportunity and the dealership wouldn't hold the offer. The laptop I bought Audrey for college. $2,500 because Nicole insisted it had to be a certain brand to last through the entire program. The living room furniture I paid for when they moved into the new house 3 years ago. $11,000 because Nicole said they couldn't host guests with old furniture. Robert's dental work. $8,500 because his insurance didn't cover that type of procedure. The vacation to Miami. $9,200 because they needed to reconnect as a couple. Audrey's sweet 16 party. $16,000 because you only turn 16 once. The roof repair on their house after a storm. $7,000 because the insurance hadn't paid them yet. Nicole's medical expenses when she had that cosmetic surgery they told me was for health reasons. $12,000. I kept writing. I kept adding. I kept remembering every phone call that started with "Mum, we have a situation," and ended with a bank transfer. When I finished, I stared at the final number for so long that my coffee went cold in my hands. $836,000. almost $1 million in 7 years, and I was still wearing the same blouses with frayed cuffs. Eating chicken and rice 4 times a week because it was the cheapest thing. Postponing my dentist appointment because it could wait. Taking the bus instead of a taxi because there was no need to spend extra. I got up from the table. I walked to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. There I was. Mary Johnson, 64 years old. Grey hair I hadn't coloured in 2 years because dye was expensive. Deep wrinkles around my eyes, rough hands from so much work, clothes that had seen better days. And then I saw it. What they had really done to me. They hadn't just taken the money. They had taken my dignity. They had convinced me that I deserved nothing, that asking for something for myself was selfishness, that my function in this life was to give until I was empty. I went back to the kitchen. I grabbed my phone, and this time I dialed a number I had saved for months, but never dared to use. Mendez and Associates Law Firm. Good morning. Good morning, I replied, surprised by how firm my voice sounded. I'd like to make an appointment with Mr. Mendez. It's about my will. They gave me an appointment for Friday at 10 in the morning. Then I called the bank. I asked to speak to my financial advisor, Mr. Julian Perry, the same one who had helped me invest my inheritance. Mrs. Johnson, it's a pleasure to hear from you. How can I help? I need to review all my accounts, my investments, savings, everything, and I need to make some changes. Of course. When would be a good time for you? As soon as possible. Can I see you tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon? I'll be there. I hung up the phone and sat in silence. For the first time in years, I felt like I was taking control of my own life. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Robert. Hi, Mum. How are you? Fine, son. And you? Good. Good. Hey, I was calling because it's almost the first of the month, and I wanted to confirm that you'll be able to help us this month. We have some extra expenses. I stayed silent, listening to him talk as if those $8,000 were an acquired right, as if I were an ATM that simply spit out money every 30 days. Mum, are you listening to me? Yes, I hear you. So will you be able to do the 8,000? Nicole already made some payments counting on it. Counting on my money, as always. Robert, I need to talk to you about that. There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line. What's wrong, Mum? Is there a problem? I think we need to have a serious conversation about the money, about everything. Everything? I don't understand. Did something happen? Many things happened, Robert. Many things that I have let slide for too long. Mum, you're scaring me. Are you okay? Are you sick? And there it was. The only reason he could imagine me setting boundaries. I had to be sick. Something had to be wrong with me. Because a healthy, normal mother would never stop giving. I'm perfectly fine. Better than I've been in years, actually. Then I don't understand what the problem is. The problem, Robert, is that I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about my life, about my decisions, about what I truly deserve. Look, Mum, if this is about the dress, Nicole didn't mean to offend you. She was just being practical. You know how she is. Yes, I knew exactly how she was. It's not just about the dress, son. It's about everything. But I'd rather we talk in person. When? The weekend. Saturday. Okay. We'll come on Saturday afternoon. Come at 3. And Robert, I need you to come alone, without Nicole. This is between you and me. Another silence. Mum, you know Nicole won't agree to that. We're a couple. We don't have secrets. It's not a secret. It's a conversation between a mother and son, one we should have had a long time ago. I don't know, Mum. Let me talk to her and I'll call you back. Robert. My voice sounded harsher than I intended. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you I need to talk to you. Just you. Saturday at 3. If Nicole has to approve you seeing your mother alone, then I think that says a lot about the situation we're in. He was quiet. I could imagine him on the other side, uncomfortable, caught between the habit of obeying me and the reality that his wife had been making all the decisions for years. Fine, he finally said. I'll come on Saturday. Alone. Thank you, son. We hung up. I stood there with the phone to my head. I had just set in motion something I couldn't stop, and although a part of me was terrified, there was another part, bigger, stronger, that was ready for this. The importance of self-protection and speaking your truth cannot be overstated. When a relationship, even a familial one, becomes exploitative, the obligation shifts from giving to self-preservation. It takes immense courage to break a long-standing cycle of enabling behavior. But setting clear, non-negotiable boundaries is the first step toward reclaiming personal dignity and true freedom. On Friday, I went to see lawyer Mr. Mendez. He was a man in his 50s, with a modest but organized office. He greeted me warmly and offered me coffee. Mrs. Johnson, tell me, what brings you here? I want to change my will. I pulled out a folder I had prepared the night before. Inside were all the documents, the bank statements, the notes of all the expenses I had covered, everything organized, everything documented. I showed it to him. I explained the situation. I told him about the $8,000 monthly, about the extra expenses, everything. Mr. Mendez listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me with an expression that mixed professionalism with empathy. Mrs. Johnson, what you have done for your son over these years is extraordinary. But I also understand why you are here. And I want you to know that you have every right to protect your assets and decide what to do with them. In my current will, Robert is the sole beneficiary of everything. But I have a granddaughter, Audrey. She's 19 years old. She's studying in college. And she is the only one who truly cares about me as a person, not as a source of money. I want to leave everything to her. I want to protect what's left. I want to make sure that if something happens to me, my money goes to someone who values it, who uses it well, who understands the sacrifice it represents. Mr. Mendez nodded. We can certainly do that. We will draft a new will where Audrey is the sole beneficiary. I would also recommend that we consider setting up some additional protections while you are alive. What kind of protections? For example, we can make sure that no one else has access to your accounts, that they cannot be added as beneficiaries on your policies or investments without your explicit, notarized consent. These are measures that protect people in your situation. In my situation, elderly people being financially exploited by their own families. It was more common than I had imagined. Yes, I said. I want all those protections. We spent 2 hours reviewing documents, signing papers, establishing safeguards. When I left that office, the afternoon sun seemed brighter than ever. That same afternoon, I went to my appointment with the financial advisor. Mr. Julian Perry received me in his bank office with the same professionalism as always. He was a young man, about 35, who had always treated me with genuine respect. Mrs. Johnson, it's a pleasure to see you. Please have a seat. How can I help you? I sat across from his desk and took a deep breath before speaking. I need to know exactly how much money I have. In all my accounts, in my investments, everything. Julian opened his computer and began reviewing. All right, let's see. You have the main checking account, where you receive your pension and from where you've been making the monthly transfers. You have the savings account you keep for emergencies, and you have the investment portfolio we established 4 years ago with your inheritance. How much is left in total? Julian did some calculations in silence. I saw his expression change slightly as he reviewed the numbers. In the checking account, you have $2,300. In savings, $1,500. And in the investment portfolio, he paused. You have $141,000. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. I had started with $180,000 4 years ago, and now there was $141,000 left. Almost $40,000 less. Money that had come directly out of my capital to maintain those monthly transfers when the returns weren't enough. I've been spending my own principal, I said quietly. Julian nodded with a serious expression. Yes, Mrs. Johnson. The last 18 months especially. The $8,000 monthly transfers are very high. The returns on your portfolio generate approximately $5,000 a month. That means every month you are taking an additional $3,000 from the initial capital. $3,000 monthly for 18 months. $54,000 of my inheritance, the money that was supposed to secure my future, simply disappeared. If you had continued at that rate, Julian continued, in less than 4 years, you would have completely exhausted your capital. You would have been left with only your $900 monthly pension. $900. That was what awaited me if I had continued down that path. Real poverty, total dependence. While my son and daughter-in-law lived comfortably with the money that was my only backup. I want to make changes, I said with a firm voice. Big changes. Tell me what you have in mind. First, I've already cancelled the automatic transfer. That is not going to continue. Julian couldn't hide a small smile of relief. I'm glad to hear that, Mrs. Johnson. While it's not my place to say, that transfer was putting your long-term financial stability at risk. Second, I want to reorganize everything. I want to know exactly how much I can spend per month without touching the principal. I want to live off the returns only. Julian began calculating on his computer. With $141,000 in well-managed investments, the monthly returns would be approximately $5,000. Adding your $900 pension, we would be talking about $5,900 a month that you can use without affecting your capital. $5,900 a month. For me alone. Never in my adult life had I had that much money available just for myself. What if I wanted to withdraw a significant amount now? Just once. To do some things I've been postponing. How much are you thinking? $10,000. Julian nodded. That's perfectly reasonable. You would still have $131,000 in investments, which would generate approximately $4,600 a month, plus your pension. Still well above what you need to live comfortably. Then I want to withdraw that $10,000, and I want you to help me set everything up so that no one else can access my accounts. Just me. No one else can be added as an authorized user, as a beneficiary, nothing. We can do that today. I would also recommend that you change your banking passwords and activate two-step authentication on all your accounts. We spent the next hour doing exactly that. Closing accesses, changing passwords, setting up protections. When we finished, my accounts were a fortress to which only I held the keys. One more thing, I said before leaving. If anyone calls asking about my accounts, my funds, anything related to me, do not give them any information. To anyone. Not even if they say they are family. Perfectly understood, Mrs. Johnson. It's already noted in your file. I left the bank with a check for $10,000 in my purse. The weight of the paper felt like freedom. My next stop was a boutique in the mall, an elegant store I had always looked at from the outside but never dared to enter. The saleswoman, a young woman about 25 years old, greeted me with a kind smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Are you looking for anything special?" "I need a dress for a wedding, something elegant, something that makes me feel beautiful." Her eyes lit up. "I have just what you need. What size are you?" I tried on 6 different dresses. The 7th was perfect. Emerald green, elegant cut, soft fabric that draped beautifully. It fit me as if it had been made for me. I looked at myself in the dressing room mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. I looked dignified. I looked alive. "It's perfect," I told the saleswoman. "It looks gorgeous on you. And we have some shoes that match perfectly. And a small clutch that... I'll take it all." The total bill was $420. The dress, the shoes, the clutch, and a silk scarf that the saleswoman insisted complemented everything wonderfully. When I pulled out my card to pay, I didn't feel a shred of guilt. Then I went to the salon. I asked for a haircut, color to cover the grey, and a manicure and pedicure. The stylist was a cheerful woman named Brenda. "How long has it been since you treated yourself, ma'am?" "Years. Many years." "Well, today we're going to catch up." I spent 3 hours in that salon. 3 hours where they washed my hair, cut it into a modern but age-appropriate style, and colored it a soft brown with subtle highlights. While my hair was drying, another girl did my nails. She painted my hands an elegant pale pink and my feet a soft red. When they finished, they led me to the large mirror, and this time, I did cry. The woman in the mirror was not the tired, worn-out Mary who had lived the last few years on autopilot, giving and giving until she was empty. This woman had a sparkle in her eyes. She had shiny, well-cared-for hair. She had dignity. "You look beautiful," Brenda said, with a genuine smile. "Thank you," I whispered. "It's been a long time since I felt this way." The salon bill was $280. I left a $50 tip. I arrived home as the sun began to set. I left my bags in the living room and sat on the sofa. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Robert and 2 text messages. "Mum, are you okay? Call me when you can." I didn't answer him. We would have our conversation on Saturday. Instead, I dialed another number. "Grandma." Audrey's voice sounded surprised. Normally, she was the one who called me, not the other way around. "Hi, my love. How are you?" "Good, Grandma. And you? Did something happen?" "Nothing bad. On the contrary, I wanted to ask if you're free tomorrow. I'd like to take you out for lunch." "Seriously, I have classes in the morning, but I get out at 1. "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 2 and we'll go somewhere nice." "Grandma, you sound different. Are you sure everything is okay?" "Everything is more than okay, Audrey. For the first time in a long time, everything is exactly as it should be." That night, before going to sleep, I stared at the ceiling of my room. In 2 days, my son would come to my house expecting our usual conversation, expecting me to still be the same complacent mother as always. But that mother no longer existed. The woman I was now had woken up. She had seen with total clarity how she had been used, minimized, reduced to a source of resources, and that woman was not going to allow it to continue. I fell asleep with a strange feeling in my chest. It took me several minutes to recognize it. It was hope. On Saturday morning, I woke up early. I put on one of my new outfits, beige pants and a cream-colored blouse I had bought the day before at another store. I put on light makeup. I looked in the mirror and smiled. At 2 sharp, I was parked outside the university, waiting for Audrey. I saw her walk out of the building with her backpack over her shoulder, looking for me. When she saw me, her expression changed completely. First confusion, then surprise, finally a huge smile. She got in the car and looked me up and down. "Grandma, you look incredible. What happened?" "What happened is that I decided to stop living as if I deserved nothing. What happened is that I opened my eyes." Audrey hugged me tightly. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say something like that." I took her to an elegant restaurant downtown, the kind of place I had always thought was too expensive or too fancy for me. We ordered an appetizer, a main course, dessert. We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything. The $8,000 monthly, the humiliations, the line about settling for less, my decision to cancel everything. Audrey listened intently. She didn't interrupt until I finished. "Grandma," she finally said, with tears in her eyes, "I've been watching how they treat you for years. Years of wanting to tell you it's not fair, that it's not normal. But every time I tried to talk to you about this, you changed the subject or defended Dad." "I know, my love. I recently realized that you are the only one who really sees me." Audrey took my hand across the table. Her eyes were full of tears, but also something that looked like relief. "Grandma, there are so many things I've wanted to tell you. So many times I've watched Mum talk to you and felt rage. But she's my mother and you're my grandmother. And I was stuck in the middle, not knowing what to do. Tell me. Tell me everything you've seen." Audrey took a deep breath. "Do you remember when you turned 60, 4 years ago? Dad and Mum didn't do anything. Not a dinner, not a cake, nothing. I wanted to organize something. But Mum said you were too simple, that you didn't like those things. So I went to your house alone with a little cupcake I bought with my allowance. Do you remember?" Of course, I remembered. Audrey had arrived with a small chocolate cake and one candle. We had eaten it together in my kitchen. It had been one of the best birthdays I could remember. "Yes, my love, I remember it perfectly." Well, that same weekend, Mum organized a huge dinner because Dad had gotten a new client at work. They spent hundreds of dollars on food, wine, decorations, and they invited a ton of people. But for your birthday, nothing. I felt a lump in my throat. "And when I turned 16, Audrey continued, Mom insisted that you had to pay for the entire party. Not just help, but pay for all of it. $16,000. Grandma, I didn't want such a big party. I told Mum I preferred something small, but she said it was my sweet 16, that it only happens once in a lifetime, that you would be happy to give it to me. And I was happy to do it. But it wasn't fair, because I saw how you lived. I've always seen your apartment, your clothes, the way you guard every single penny. And then I would see our house full of new things. Mum with expensive purses, Dad changing phones every year. And I knew where that money came from. I wiped away a tear that had started to run down my cheek. Why did you never tell me anything? I tried, Grandma, many times. Do you remember about 2 years ago, when I asked if you were saving for your retirement? You told me not to worry, that you had everything under control. I insisted. I told you it seemed like you worked too much for your age, and you changed the subject. She was right. I remembered it. Audrey had tried to talk to me, and I had shut down the conversation because I didn't want to face the truth. I also tried to talk to Dad, Audrey said. I told him it wasn't right for you to send them so much money every month. Do you know what he told me? What? He said you did it because you wanted to, that it was your way of showing love, that he had never asked you for anything, that you offered, as if that made it better. As if the fact that you gave them everything without them having to ask absolved them of any responsibility. I closed my eyes. Hearing my granddaughter describe the dynamics so clearly hurt more than I expected. And Mum is worse, Audrey continued, her voice trembling. She talks about you as if you were a burden, as if your existence were a problem they have to put up with. I've heard her phone conversations with her friends. She says awful things. Grandma, she says you're complicated, that you don't understand how things work now, that at your age you should be more grateful for everything they do for you. Everything they do for me, I repeated in disbelief. Yes, as if visiting you once in a while was a huge sacrifice, as if tolerating your existence was an act of charity. I felt something break inside me, a part that still wanted to believe that maybe I was exaggerating, that maybe things weren't that bad. But hearing it from Audrey, from someone who had been a silent witness for years, made it impossible to keep denying it. Do you know what hurt the most? Audrey asked. It was the day Mum told me that when I got married, she hoped I wouldn't be like you, that I wouldn't be one of those mothers-in-law who gets involved in everything and expects constant attention. I told her you had never done that you never asked for anything. And do you know what she answered? I shook my head. She told me, exactly, that's why it's worse. Because she puts on this martyr act of not asking for anything but expecting us to guess what she needs. I was speechless. Grandma, you literally give them thousands of dollars every month, and she has the nerve to call you a martyr. We fell silent for a moment. The waiter came to clear our plates. We ordered coffee. Audrey, I finally said, I need to tell you something important. I explained everything I had done in the past few days. The cancellation of the transfers, the lawyer, the new will, the financial protections, everything. When I finished, Audrey had an expression that mixed relief with concern. Grandma, I'm so proud of you. But I'm also scared. Mum is not going to accept this. She's not going to let it go. I know. And Dad is going to be caught in the middle. He's going to try to convince you to go back to the way things were. He's going to use guilt. He's going to remind you of everything you've done for him. He's going to try to make you feel like you're hurting him. I know that too. Are you ready for that? I took a moment before answering. Was I ready? Was I prepared to see my son try to manipulate me? To face Nicole's wrath? To stand firm when they tried to make me feel like the villain of the story? I'm not sure I'm ready, I admitted. But I know it's necessary. I know that if I don't do it now, I'm going to end my days with nothing. No money, no dignity, nothing. Audrey squeezed my hand. I'm going to be with you. Whatever you need. If you need me to be there when you talk to Dad, I'll be there. If you need me to remind you why you're doing this when you start to doubt, I'll do it. You're not alone in this. I felt tears running freely down my face now. There's something else you need to know, I told her. I changed my will. Everything I own is going to be yours when I'm gone. Not Robert, not Nicole, you. Audrey froze. Grandma, I don't need your money. It's not about needing it. It's about deserving it. You are the only one who has treated me like a human being, the only one who has seen my worth beyond what I can give. And I want to make sure that when I'm gone, what's left of my effort goes to someone who appreciates it. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just promise me that you're going to use that money to build a beautiful life, to study, to travel, to do what makes you happy. Promise me you won't let anyone use you the way they used me. I promise. I paid the bill. We left the restaurant embracing. In the car, on the way to drop Audrey off at her university residence, she asked me, "When are you going to talk to Dad?" "Tomorrow. He's coming at 3 in the afternoon. Do you want me there?" I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted Audrey for support. But another part knew this conversation had to be between Robert and me alone. No, this is something I need to do alone, but I'm going to call you as soon as I finish. Okay, but if at any point you feel like you need help, you call me and I'll come right away. I don't care if it's in the middle of the conversation. You call me. I will. I dropped her off at her residence. We hugged again before she got out of the car. I love you, Grandma, and I'm so proud of you. I love you too, my life, more than you can imagine. That night, back home, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea. Tomorrow would be the day. Tomorrow I would confront my son. Tomorrow I would have to tell him truths I had been suppressing for years. I checked my phone. There were 2 more messages from Robert. Mum, confirming I'm coming tomorrow at 3. Are you sure you don't want Nicole to come? It feels weird leaving her out. I only responded to the first. Yes, I'll wait for you at 3. Come alone. His response came 5 minutes later. Okay. Nothing more. Just, okay. I wondered if he had any idea what was coming, if he had noticed that something had changed, if he had noticed that in his last calls I had sounded different. Probably not. Robert had learned not to pay much attention to me unless he needed something. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for hours, mentally rehearsing what I would say to him, thinking about all the ways he might react, preparing myself for the guilt, the manipulation, the attempts to make me change my mind. Around 2 in the morning, I finally got up. I went to the kitchen and took out a box I kept on the highest shelf of the pantry. A box full of memories. Inside were photos of Robert as a child, his first day of school, his birthdays, family Christmases, diplomas, certificates. Evidence of a life I had built for him with so much love and so much effort. There were also photos of us when he was an adult. But I noticed something in those more recent photos. In the old ones, when he was a child, Robert looked at me with adoration, with pure love. In the recent ones, if he was looking at me at all, his expression was distant, absent. When had it happened? When had my son stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as a resource? I put the photos away, not with sadness, but with clarity. Those photos were from the past. The Robert in those images no longer existed, or maybe he had never existed in the way I believed. I went back to bed. This time I managed to sleep. I woke up at 9 in the morning. I showered. I dressed carefully. Grey pants, a simple but elegant white blouse. I did my hair. I put on light makeup. I spent the morning cleaning the apartment, even though it was already clean. I needed to keep my hands busy. I needed to do something to calm my nerves. At 1 in the afternoon, I made coffee. At 2, I took out cups. At 2:30, I sat in the living room to wait. My phone rang at 2:45. It was Robert. Mum, I'm leaving now. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'll wait for you here. The doorbell rang at exactly 3:05. I got up from the sofa, took a deep breath, and went to open the door. Robert was standing on the threshold with his hands in his pockets. He was wearing a shirt I had bought him last year and jeans. He looked uncomfortable, like a child called into the principal's office without knowing exactly what he had done wrong. Hi, Mum. Hello, son. Come in. He entered and sat on the sofa. I sat in the armchair across from him. I had left the coffee table empty except for a manila folder containing documents I might need to show him. Do you want coffee? I asked. No, thank you, I'm fine. We were silent for a moment. Robert looked everywhere but at me. He played with his hands. He crossed and uncrossed his legs. Mum, this feels really strange. What did you want to talk about? I decided to get straight to the point. Robert, do you know how much money I've given you in the last 7 years? He hadn't expected that question. I saw it on his face. Well, you've helped us a lot. I don't know exactly how much. $836,000. The number hung in the air between us, like an accusation. That's not counting, I continued. The clothes I've bought you, the birthday and Christmas gifts, the dinners I've paid for every time we go out, just in direct transfers and major expenses, $836,000. Robert shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mum, if this is because you felt bad about what Nicole said the other day about the dress, she didn't mean it. It's not just about the dress, Robert. It's about everything. It's about 7 years of giving and giving without receiving anything in return. It's about being treated as if my only function in this family was to be a source of money. That's not true. You're my mother. We love you. You love me? Really? I stood up and picked up the folder from the table. I opened it and took out a calendar where I had marked dates. Do you know how many times you have visited me in the last year without asking me for money or without me inviting you? Robert remained silent. 3 times, Robert. 3 times in 12 months. And 2 of those 3 times you came because you were in the area and decided to stop by. You stayed less than half an hour each time. Mum, I've been busy. Work, the house, Nicole. I understand you're busy. What I don't understand is why you have time to go to the gym 5 times a week, to go out to dinner with your friends every weekend, to go on vacation, but you don't have time for your mother. It's not fair for you to say that. It's not fair. Do you know what's not fair, Robert? That on my last birthday, the only person who remembered was Audrey. You called me 3 days later because she reminded you. And when you called, you asked if I could lend you $2,000 for a car repair. I watched him turn red. He knew it was true and couldn't deny it. Mum, I'm sorry I haven't been more present, but nothing. I don't want excuses. I want you to understand something very important. The $8,000 a month I've been sending you, that's over. The silence that followed was absolute. Robert looked at me as if he hadn't understood the words. What? I'm not going to keep sending you money every month. I cancelled the automatic transfer. Mum, you can't do that. We're counting on that money. We have expenses, commitments. Expenses and commitments that are yours, not mine. You're 38 years old, Robert. You're an adult man with a college degree that I paid for, with a car that I helped you buy, living in a house where I put down half the down payment. It's time for you to support yourself. But Mum, you don't understand. Nicole quit her job when we got married because we agreed she would take care of the house. I'm the only one earning income, and my salary alone is not enough to maintain our lifestyle. Then change your lifestyle. It's not that easy. Of course it's easy. It's exactly what you told me I had to do. Settle for less. Accept living with the bare minimum. Do you remember those words, Robert? Because I will never forget them. Mum, Nicole didn't mean… Yes, she did. She meant exactly that. That I, at 64, after working my whole life, after raising you alone when your father died, after giving you almost $1 million, don't deserve to buy a dress. But you deserve a vacation in Miami, dinners at expensive restaurants, designer clothes, a new car every 3 years. Robert ran his hands through his hair. I recognized that gesture. It was what he did when he was stressed and looking for a way out. Mum, I know Nicole can be a little direct sometimes, but she only meant… I don't care what she meant. I care about how she made me feel. She made me feel like trash, Robert, as if my existence were an inconvenience. as if daring to want something for myself was an unforgivable act of selfishness. You're exaggerating. Am I exaggerating? Tell me, when was your birthday last year? How much did I spend on your party? Robert didn't answer. $4,500. Between the venue, the food, the cake, the gift. $4,500 to celebrate you. And when my birthday was 2 months later, you didn't even call me on the right day. I already told you I'm sorry, I forgot. You didn't forget, Robert. It simply wasn't important to you. I'm not important to you. Only my money is. That's not true, and you know it. I stood up and walked toward the window. I needed to move. I needed to channel the energy I felt building up in my chest. Do you know what I realized a few days ago? That I can't remember the last time we had a real conversation. One where you asked me how I was, what I've been doing, how I feel. All our conversations revolve around what you need. Always. Mum, if you felt that way, why did you never say anything? I turned to look at him. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I stopped giving, you would stop coming. And now I realize I was right. Because the only reason you come is because you take for granted that the money will keep coming. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Robert. I learned that the hard way. And now it's your turn to learn. Robert stood up. So what? You're going to punish us? You're going to cut us off completely because Nicole said something that offended you? I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. Mum, you have to understand our situation. We built a life based on that help. We can't just… And me? Did anyone think about my situation? Did anyone think that maybe I also needed that money? That I was spending my principal, the money that was supposed to secure my old age, to maintain your comfort? Robert opened his mouth to answer, but closed it again. For the first time, he seemed to be truly listening. I'm 64, I continued. I'm not going to live forever. And when the time comes that I really can't fend for myself, when I need help, care, attention, what's going to happen? Are you going to be there for me? Or am I going to end up in the cheapest nursing home you can find because I won't have any money left to give you? We would never do that. Wouldn't you? Are you sure? Because so far, you haven't shown any interest in my well-being, only in my bank account. Robert slumped back onto the sofa. He looked defeated. What do you want me to do, Mum? What do you expect from me? I expect you to grow up. I expect you to take responsibility for your own life. I expect you to stop seeing your mother as an ATM and start seeing me as a human being. I see you as my mother. No, Robert. You see me as your mother when it's convenient for you. The rest of the time, I'm invisible to you. There was a long silence. I could see Robert processing, trying to find the right words. But I didn't need nice words anymore. I needed actions. The $8,000 is not coming back, I said firmly. That is final. But there's something else you need to know. I sat down again and opened the folder. I pulled out a copy of the new will. I went to a lawyer. I changed my will. Everything I own, when I die, is going to Audrey. Not you, her. The colour drained from Robert's face. What? Mum, you can't do that. I'm your son. I'm your only family. Audrey is my family too, and she is the only one who has treated me with real love and respect, the only one who sees me as more than a source of resources. This is because of Nicole, isn't it? You don't like her, and you're punishing me for marrying her. This has nothing to do with who you married. It has to do with how you have allowed me to be treated. It has to do with your own actions and inactions. You can't disinherit me. It's not fair. I can, and I did, and it is fair, because I already gave you your inheritance while I was alive, Robert. $836,000. That is your inheritance. You won't receive 1 cent more when I die. Robert stood up abruptly. This is a mistake. You're making a huge mistake. The mistake I made was for 7 years, allowing myself to be used. Now I'm correcting that mistake. Nicole is going to... He left the sentence hanging in the air, as if he suddenly realized what he was about to say. Nicole is going to what, Robert? Is she going to get angry? Is she going to be furious? Tell me, what is your wife going to do when she finds out the free money is over? Robert walked toward the door and then returned. He was frantic. I could see the panic starting to set in his eyes. Mum, please, you have to reconsider this. Give me a month. Give me time to reorganize things, to talk to Nicole, to adjust our budget. No. No, just like that. Just like that. Because if I give you a month, you'll come back in a month with another excuse, and then another, and another, and we'll be in the exact same place a year from now. This ends now. But we have the mortgage, the car payments, the credit cards. Those are all your problems, Robert, not mine. You signed for that mortgage, you bought that car, you used those cards. Now it's your turn to solve it. And what am I supposed to do? Sell the house? Return the car? Do what you have to do. Get a second job. Nicole can go back to work. You can move to a smaller place. You can do exactly what millions of people do every day. Live within your means. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Robert. I just stopped letting you do it to me. Robert was breathing rapidly. I could see he was between anger and desperation. And what am I supposed to tell Nicole? How do I explain that we suddenly don't have $8,000 a month? Tell her the truth, that your mother got tired of being treated like she was worthless, that your mother decided she deserved dignity, that your mother finally opened her eyes. She's going to say you're being selfish. Probably, but I won't be here to hear it anymore. Robert looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years, something between confusion and genuine pain. Do you really hate me that much? The question hit me in the chest. I sat down again, suddenly feeling the weight of all this. I don't hate you, Robert. I love you. You are my son, and you always will be. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Loving someone doesn't mean making yourself small so they can be big. Then what do you want from me? I want you to be a man. I want you to take charge of your life. I want you to stop depending on your 64-year-old mother to support your family. And I want you to, maybe someday, be able to see me as more than a means to an end. Robert slumped back onto the sofa. He covered his face with his hands. For a moment, I saw the boy he was. The boy who ran to me when he fell down. The boy who looked for me when he was scared. The boy who told me I was his favorite person in the whole world. But that boy had grown up, and the man he had become had forgotten that I was also a person with needs, with dreams, with a right to be treated with respect. I don't know how we're going to survive without that money, he finally said in a broken voice. You'll find a way. People always find a way. What if we can't? What if we lose everything? Then you'll learn what it really means to lose everything. Because I lived it, Robert. When your father died, I was left with debts and a miserable pension. And I survived. I worked until my bones ached. I did whatever it took. And I never, ever asked anyone to rescue me. You're stronger than me. No, I simply had no other choice. And now you don't either. There was another long silence. Robert wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Is there anything I can do to make you change your mind? anything. You could start by respecting me, by treating me like your mother and not your bank, by showing up when you don't need anything, by remembering my birthday, by asking me how I really am and listening to the answer. But none of that is going to bring the money back. That's part of the past now. And the will? The will isn't going to change either. Audrey has earned that place. You've already received more than most children receive from their parents in a lifetime. Robert stood up slowly. I think I should go. I think so too. He walked toward the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. Mum, I really am sorry if I made you feel bad. It wasn't my intention. I know. And that's part of the problem. You never intended to hurt me. You just didn't care enough to realize you were doing it. He opened the door and walked out without saying anything else. I watched him walk toward his car. I watched him get in. I watched him sit there for several minutes before starting the engine. When he finally left, I closed the door and stood in the hallway. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but the tears didn't come. What I felt was something close to relief, as if I had been carrying an enormous weight for years and had finally set it down. I went to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. I sat at the table. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Audrey. Are you done yet? Are you okay? We're done. I'm okay. Better than I expected. Do you want me to come over? It's not necessary, but thank you for worrying. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my life. I put the phone down on the table and looked out the window. The afternoon sun shone through the curtains, creating patterns of light on the floor. For the first time in a very long time, the silence in my house didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. I knew this wasn't over. I knew Nicole would react. I knew the storm was coming. But for now, in this moment, I had done what I needed to do. I had told my son the truth. I had set boundaries. I had defended myself. And I had survived. That night, I cooked for myself. Not chicken and rice again. I made a small steak I had bought the day before, with roasted vegetables and a fresh salad. I poured myself a glass of wine that I had also bought and never dared to open because it was too expensive to drink alone. I ate dinner in my small dining room, savoring every bite, enjoying the taste of the wine, allowing myself this simple pleasure without guilt. Afterward, I washed the dishes, put on my pajamas, and sat in the living room with a book I had wanted to read for months but never had time to open. I read for 2 hours, lost in the story, forgetting everything else for a moment. When I finally went to sleep, I lay down with the feeling that something fundamental had changed in me. I was no longer the Mary who settled for crumbs. I was no longer the mother who gave until she was empty. I was no longer the woman who believed her worth depended on how much she could sacrifice for others. I was simply Mary, a woman who deserved respect, a woman who deserved dignity, a woman who had finally found the courage to claim her own life. I fell asleep peacefully. The next day, I woke up early. It was barely 7 in the morning when my phone started ringing. It was Robert. I didn't answer. He called again, and again, and again. Then the messages started. Mum, please answer. I need to talk to you. Nicole wants to talk to you. Please, Mum. This is serious. I left the phone on the nightstand and went to make breakfast. By the time I returned to my room an hour later, I had 15 missed calls and 22 messages. The messages had evolved. The first ones were from Robert, begging me to answer. Then Nicole's started. Mary, we need to talk now. You can't just cut off the money without telling us. This is incredibly irresponsible of you. We have commitments. We have payments to make. Call me as soon as you see this. I didn't respond to any of them. Mid-morning, Robert showed up at my door. I heard the doorbell, then the knocking, then his voice. "Mum, I know you're in there. Your car is outside. Please open up. We need to talk." I stayed seated in the living room, not moving. "Mum, please. Nicole is very upset. We need to resolve this." More knocking. "I'm not leaving until you open the door." I waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Finally, I heard his footsteps walking away, the sound of his car starting. I looked out the window. He was gone. I sat back down. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. This was exactly what I had anticipated. The panic, the desperation, the attempts to make me feel guilty. But I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to back down. The phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Something made me answer. "Hello? Mary?" It was Nicole's voice, cold, controlled, dangerous. "Nicole, we need to talk. In person. Today. I have nothing to discuss with you." "Oh, I think you do. Because what you're doing doesn't just affect us. It affects Audrey. It affects your granddaughter." I felt my blood run cold. "Audrey has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with it. Because if you cut us off, we're going to have to make adjustments too. And one of those adjustments is going to be stopping payment for her university. You don't pay for her university. I pay for it. Directly to the school." There was a silence on the other end. "Well," Nicole finally said, "then maybe it's time for Audrey to know exactly what kind of grandmother she has. One who prefers to keep her money rather than help her own family." "Nicole, listen to me very carefully. Audrey already knows everything. She knows exactly how much money I've given you for years. She knows how you've treated me. And she is on my side." Another silence. This one longer. "You told Audrey?" Nicole's voice sounded incredulous. "I told her everything. And I'm going to tell you one more thing. My will has changed. When I die, everything goes to Audrey. You won't see a cent." I heard Nicole take a sharp breath on the other end of the line. "This is war, then." "No, Nicole, this is dignity. Something you will never understand." And I hung up. This is a profound lesson in the value of kindness, patience, and good conduct. While material wealth can be lost or taken, the investment in true human connection, the love, respect, and presence that Audrey showed, is the only inheritance that truly matters. Behavior rooted in entitlement and exploitation, as demonstrated by Robert and Nicole, eventually leads to isolation, proving that character, not cash, is the ultimate measure of a person's worth. The next 2 weeks were a constant storm. Robert and Nicole kept calling, sending messages, showing up at my door when I least expected it. But I stood firm. I didn't open the door. I didn't answer. I didn't give an inch. The messages evolved over the days. At first, it was desperate pleading, then attempts at manipulation, finally veiled threats and direct accusations. "You're selfish. You're going to ruin our lives. Everyone is going to know what kind of mother you are. Audrey is going to end up hating you when she sees what you caused." But I was no longer alone in this. Audrey came to visit me every 2 days. She stayed for hours with me. She reminded me why I had made this decision, when doubts began to creep in during the quiet nights. "Grandma, Mum called me yesterday," Audrey told me one afternoon while we were having tea in my living room. "She tried to convince me to talk to you, to get you to change your mind." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her it was time for them to learn to live on their own resources." She got furious. She said I was ungrateful, that they had given me everything. I'm sorry, my love. I didn't want you to be caught in the middle of this. I'm not in the middle, Grandma. I'm on your side. I always have been. Audrey pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a message Nicole had sent her. If your grandmother doesn't reconsider, we're going to have to take drastic measures, and you're going to have to choose whose side you're on. I felt rage surge through my body. She's trying to use you as a weapon, I said. I know, but it won't work. I've already chosen, Grandma, and I chose dignity over comfort, just like you. A week after my conversation with Robert, what I knew would happen finally did. Nicole showed up at my door, alone. I saw her through the peephole. She was standing with her arms crossed, dressed in expensive clothes that had probably been bought with the money I sent in previous months. Her expression was one of contained fury. She rang the doorbell, once, twice, 3 times. Mary, I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk like adults. I stayed still. I'm not leaving. I can stay here all day if I have to. I took a deep breath. Something in me decided it was time to face this, once and for all. I opened the door, but I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. Nicole. Mary, you finally decided to show your face. What do you want? I want us to stop this nonsense and go back to normal. The normal where you use me and I let you. That normal no longer exists. Nicole let out a humorless laugh. Use you. How dramatic you've become. No one is using you. You decided to help us. No one forced you. You're right. No one forced me. I decided to help. And now I decided to stop. It's my money and my decision. Your money? Nicole repeated scornfully. And where did that money come from, Mary? From the sale of a house your mother left you. Money you didn't work for. And now you act like you're a self-made business magnate. That money was my inheritance. My mother worked her whole life to have that house, and she left it to me, not you. But Robert is your son, your only son. Everything you have should be for him. Everything I have has already been for him. $836,000. That is his inheritance. He already received it. Nicole took a step toward me. Her face was red with anger. Listen to me, old woman. We built a life based on that help. We bought the house counting on that money. We made financial commitments because we knew we could count on you. You can't just cut everything off and leave us hanging. Yes, I can. And I did. This is elder abuse in reverse. You have resources and you refuse to help your own family. That makes you cruel. Abuse? You want to talk about abuse? The abuse was making me feel like I deserved nothing. It was treating me as if my only function was to finance your life. It was telling me that at my age I should settle for less, while you lived in abundance with my money. I never said that. Yes, you did. You said it in my living room 3 weeks ago. And those words were what finally opened my eyes. Nicole clenched her jaw. Fine. If that's how you want to play, that's how we'll play. But I'm warning you, Mary. There are consequences for this. Robert is devastated. He's not sleeping. He's not eating well. He's sick with stress because of you. Because of me? Not because of you who never learnt to live within your means. Because of me? You're his mother. Mothers are supposed to take care of their children. They take care of them, Nicole. They don't support them until they're 40 years old. There's a difference. You're selfish, and you're going to end up alone. Completely alone. Because when you really need us, when you're a sick old woman who can't take care of herself, we won't be there. Did you hear me? We won't be there. I looked her directly in the eyes. I'd rather die alone than live being used. And frankly, Nicole, you've never been there for me. Not even when I was giving you everything. So your threat doesn't scare me. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is letting it last this long. Nicole turned and started walking down the stairs. Halfway down, she stopped and turned around. On the first day of the month, when the money doesn't arrive, Robert is going to collapse. And that's going to be on your conscience. Robert is an adult man. If he collapses, it will be because he never learned to support himself. And that is his responsibility, not mine. Nicole left without saying anything else. She got into her car and sped off so fast that the tires squealed against the pavement. I closed the door. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from something that felt dangerously close to triumph. I called Audrey immediately. Nicole was here. Are you okay? What happened? I told her everything, every word, every threat. Grandma, I'm so proud of you. I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't, but it was necessary. Do you know what Dad told me yesterday? Audrey asked. He said you had become bitter in your old age. That age had changed you. Age didn't change me, Audrey. Exhaustion changed me. Awakening changed me. Realizing I deserved better changed me. I know. And I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm going to be with you. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally allowed myself to process everything. I cried. I cried for the son I thought I had, and who maybe never existed. I cried for the lost years of being invisible. I cried for the woman I was who settled for so little. But I also smiled. I smiled because I had found my voice, because I had stood up for myself, because I had finally chosen myself. And when the tears dried, I felt lighter than ever. The first day of the month arrived, the day when the $8,000 would normally appear automatically in Robert's account, the day when, for the first time in 7 years, that transfer would not happen. I woke up early, I made my coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 9 in the morning, the calls started. Robert, one after another. 15 calls in 20 minutes. I didn't answer any of them. Then the messages came. Mum, the money didn't arrive. It must be a bank error. Please check your account. Mum, answer. I left the phone on the table and continued drinking my coffee. At 10 in the morning, Robert and Nicole were at my door. Both of them this time. I could hear their voices from inside. Mary, open the door right now, Nicole screamed. This is not a game anymore. Robert was also talking, his voice more desperate than angry. Mum, please. We have to pay the mortgage today. If we don't make the payment, we'll be late. Please. I approached the door, but I didn't open it. I spoke from inside. Robert, I told you this was going to happen. You had 2 weeks to prepare. Prepare? How are we supposed to prepare for losing $8,000 overnight? The same way millions of people live, with what they earn. You can't do this, Nicole shouted. We're going to lose the house. Is that what you want? Your son to end up on the street? I want my son to learn to be responsible for his own life. You're a horrible woman, Nicole spat. A horrible mother. Robert tried to calm her down. Nicole, wait. Let me talk to her. Your mother, Nicole said with venom in every word, prefers to see us suffer than to help. That's all you need to know about her. I listened to them argue with each other on the other side of the door. Robert, begging her to calm down. Nicole getting increasingly furious. Finally, I heard their footsteps walking away, the car door slamming, the engine starting. I stood on the other side of the door for several minutes. My heart was pounding, but I didn't feel guilt, only certainty that I was doing the right thing. The following days were a constant barrage: messages, calls, emails. Robert even tried to contact me through social media, which I hardly ever used. Every message was more desperate than the last. Mum, our cable and internet were cut off. Mum, the bank called us about the car payment. Mum, Nicole is sick with stress. She needs to see a doctor, but we don't have the money. Mum, please, I'm begging you. I blocked their numbers. I blocked their accounts. I needed peace, and they weren't going to give it to me. Audrey kept me informed of what was happening. Dad had to ask his boss for a salary advance, she told me one afternoon. And Mum is looking for work for the first time in years. She's furious. She says it's humiliating. It's not humiliating to work. It's what normal people do. They also sold Mum's car, the one they bought 2 years ago. I felt a pang when I heard that, but I quickly dismissed it. That car had been bought with my money. A $30,000 car that Nicole needed to feel safe on the road. They're going to have to sell more things, I said. Or move to a cheaper place. Or both. I know. And they know it too. That's why they're so angry. Because they're realizing that they really depended on you for everything. 2 weeks after the first day, I received a certified letter. It was from a lawyer. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a formal letter. Robert and Nicole were suing me. They alleged that there was a verbal agreement to sustain them financially, that they had made life decisions based on my promise of continued help, that cutting off that help constituted financial and emotional damage. They wanted the judge to force me to continue the monthly transfers, or, failing that, to pay them a sum of $200,000 as compensation. I sat on my sofa with the letter in my hands. I felt rage. I felt sadness. I felt disbelief. My own son was suing me. I immediately called Mr. Mendez, the lawyer. Mrs. Johnson, I imagined something like this might happen, he said when I explained the situation. But I want you to rest assured. This lawsuit has no solid legal basis. Are you sure? Completely. You have the absolute right to decide what to do with your money. There is no signed contract. There is no legal obligation. The transfers you made were voluntary gifts. You can stop them whenever you want. And as for the verbal agreement, they would have to prove it. And even if they did, verbal agreements of this type are not legally binding, especially when it comes to gifts. Don't worry, we will respond to this lawsuit, and it will be dismissed quickly. How much will it cost me to defend myself? My fees would be $3,000 to handle this completely, but believe me, it's worth every penny. And we can probably ask for them to pay the legal costs when the judge dismisses the case. Do it. Defend me. With pleasure. And Mrs. Johnson, I know this must be very painful for you, but you are doing the right thing. When I hung up, I sat in silence. My son had sued me. He had taken me to court. He was willing to destroy what was left of our relationship for money. And in that moment, something inside me died for good. The last hope that maybe, somewhere deep down, Robert still loved me as a son. That hope died. I wrote to Audrey. Your father sued me. Her response came in seconds. I know. He just called me to tell me. He tried to get me to testify in his favor. I told him not to dream about it. How are you, my love? Sad. Angry. Ashamed to call him my father. How are you? Freed. For the first time. Completely freed. And it was true. Because that lawsuit, however painful, had cut the last thread that bound me to them. The last vestige of obligation. The last bit of guilt. I no longer owed them anything. Neither money, nor time, nor worry. I was free. 6 months later, the lawsuit was dismissed exactly as Mr. Mendez had predicted. The judge not only rejected the case, but ordered Robert and Nicole to pay my legal costs. $3,000 that I know hurt them to pay. I didn't feel satisfaction, only a definitive closure. Robert tried to call me after the verdict came out. I didn't answer. He sent me a long message full of justifications and excuses. I deleted it without finishing reading it. Nicole, for her part, disappeared completely from my life, and it was the best gift she could have given me. Today, as I write this, 8 months have passed since that Sunday when everything changed. 8 months since I cancelled that transfer. 8 months since I took back my life. What has happened in this time? I sold some old furniture and redecorated my apartment. Now I have a living room I like, with colours that make me happy. I hired someone to paint the walls. I bought plants and placed them in every corner. I signed up for a painting class for seniors. I discovered I have a talent for landscapes. I made friends, women my age who are also rediscovering themselves. I started travelling. Nothing extravagant, but trips I had always wanted to take. I went to Key West. I visited the beaches of New Jersey. Audrey and I are closer than ever. She is thriving in college. She has a grandmother who supports her unconditionally and expects nothing in return. I told her everything about the will. I explained that when I'm gone, she will have the resources to build the life she wants. She cried and hugged me, and told me she would rather have me for 1,000 more years than any inheritance. And Robert? 3 months ago, I found out through Audrey that they had to sell the house. They moved to a smaller apartment. Nicole got a job as a receptionist. Robert is still at the same job, but he now works extra hours. They are learning to live with what they have. They are discovering what it means to be responsible adults. I don't feel pity. I feel that they are finally living the life they deserve. Audrey asked me a few weeks ago if I would ever forgive her father. I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It means letting go of the resentment, not re-establishing the relationship. What if he changes? If he really changes? Then maybe we could have some kind of relationship. But it will never be the same as before, because I'm not the same either. And it's true. I'm not the same Mary who settled for crumbs, who believed her worth depended on how much she could give, who accepted being invisible just to feel needed. I am a woman who learned that true love is not demonstrated by self-destructive sacrifice, that boundaries are not selfishness but self-care, that I deserve dignity, respect, and consideration. I learned that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to prioritize my well-being, that it's okay to live for myself after living for others for so long. Last week, I went to my cousin Sarah's daughter's wedding. I wore my emerald green dress. I did my hair. I put on makeup carefully. When I arrived, several people stopped me to tell me how great I looked. "Mary, you're radiant," my cousin told me. "What have you done? You look years younger." And I knew exactly how to answer. I found myself. I danced at that wedding. I laughed until my stomach hurt. I ate cake without guilt. I drank champagne. I lived. And when I returned home that night, tired but happy, I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back had wrinkles. She had grey hairs starting to show through the dye. She had 64 years of history written on her face. But she also had a spark in her eyes. She had dignity in her posture. She had peace in her expression. They told me I should settle for less, that I should accept living with the bare minimum. They were right about one thing. I learned to live with the minimum. But the minimum is not money. It's not material things. It's not settling. The minimum is dignity, respect, self-love. And those 3 things, Finally, I have in abundance. I cancelled that $8,000 transfer, and yes, their world collapsed in days. But by the time they realized what they had really lost, it was too late, because I had already found something much more valuable than their approval. I had found my freedom, and that no one will ever take away from me again. The most profound lesson this experience taught me is that self-worth is not an exchange rate. It is an intrinsic value that must be guarded fiercely. For 7 years, I confused financial support with parental love, allowing my generosity to become a tool for my own emotional neglect. The true tragedy was not the money I lost, but the dignity I surrendered. Moving forward, the greatest change I must sustain is operating from a place of self-respect, not fear. I need to actively invest in my present and future happiness by nurturing authentic relationships, traveling, and pursuing my passions, instead of being a passive funder of others' entitlements. My continued happiness and peace depend on maintaining these clear, firm boundaries. The love for my son remains, but the obligation to enable him is permanently severed. My job now is to live a full, beautiful life that sets a positive, self-affirming example for Audrey, proving that it is never too late to take control and demand the respect you deserve.